Which round one defensive lineman best fits the Dallas Cowboys? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're taking a look at some round one defensive linemen that could interest the Dallas Cowboys. I know there's a lot of people out there that believe offensive line, round one, you can put it in pen now. I'm not so sure. So we're going to be looking at some guys that could potentially help the Cowboys out on the defensive side of the ball. And I want to start with Chop Robinson, a pass rusher from Penn State. The Cowboys have had some luck. I don't know if you heard about this before, Landon, like some luck drafting a Penn State pass rusher. What do you think about Chop?
Man, he's something else, right? He's explosive. There's zero ways around that. And that's clearly the headline with this guy. He is small framed as a pass rusher. He's sub 6'2", he's sub 260. He has short arms, but he has, kind of average sized hands. But I mean, you see the numbers here. He's incredibly explosive. No shock here. Speed paired with flexibility and balance with just a sprinkle of hand technique is going to get you really far. And I think that's what you've got here in Chop Robinson. He can run underneath the table without losing speed. He's got that great ankle flexion. You see him going to get low and get around blockers without too much of an issue. Unsurprisingly, his game is built completely on his explosiveness, right? Every aspect of it, the counters and everything, it's all built on that kind of ability to initially get off the line of scrimmage, and then the fear that blockers have of his ability to get off the line of scrimmage like that. His hands are a flash. They're not always accurate, but they're always moving once he's engaged. He's the classic one-trick pony, but that trick is very good, situation right now. It's all speed with him. It works, but it is kind of all that he's doing right now. He looks comfy when asked to drop into a zone or operate in space. I honestly saw him do it way too often, though, that I think Penn State shouldn't have used so much zone blitz, but he's decent at it. He almost got a pick. He ended up dropping it when he was undercutting an in-breaking route, and I saw him playing against Illinois. Once he gets going, he can create a lot of momentum. So you'll see him with some speed to power stuff. You see him kind of get offensive tackles into weird body positions, and then he just puts his hands in their chest and drives through them, right, with good leverage. Disruption is production. I think that's the kind of key thing with this guy. He doesn't, we're going to talk about production overall and sacks and all that good stuff, but this guy scares QBs and offensive tackles, and he affects the plays mostly on pass plays, and you see it all throughout his tape. There are definitely times when he is having an effect on pass plays, but he's not, creating necessarily a hurry for himself or a sack, but he's causing a bad play by the offense. His athleticism helps him overcome length issues with when his technique is clean and he has a plan. He beats even the guys with length, but he's going to need that in the NFL because it won't work as well without technique in the NFL because everybody's long. Yeah. He stresses blocking schemes when he shoots inside. Speed puts blockers in bad body position by the time they can react. Where does he win? He's an explosive penetrator. Unanswered questions. He has to face length every week in the NFL. Will he have the technique necessary to thrive early, or will there be a learning curve as he's trying to get up to speed and being more consistent with his hand technique and having a pass rush plan?
Yeah, a couple things on Chop. So one of the stats that has been kind of tried and true when it comes to pass rushers in the NFL is how many tackles for a loss per game do you create? And generally, for a first-round pass rusher, you want to be at like 1.5. And actually, your first-round guys, maybe even a little bit more than that. He had just 17.5 total tackles for a loss over the last 2 seasons. That's way below the threshold for what you even want in a guy in the first 3 rounds. However, you're right. Like he created a lot of disruption. If you're watching with us on YouTube right now, you can see the numbers in front of you. 97th percentile pass rush grade, 99th percentile no play action pass rush grade, 95th percentile win rate on pass rushes, 90th percentile grade on true pass sets. Like he just beat the offensive tackles over and over and over again. And it didn't always result in sacks. I think he only had, was it 6.5 sacks over 3 years. But it's one of these like, hey, if you're watching the games, opponents can't block him. Now, the run defense stuff can be a little bit up and down. I know he graded out really well from PFF. And I don't know how he would fit necessarily in the Cowboys defense when you have Micah Parsons on the other side, but it would be really cool to see Chop Robinson and Micah Parsons with those two guys, the athletes that they are on, on both sides. Pretty intriguing, Landon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, these guys both, it's hard not to see the Micah Parsons comparisons, right? Except for the fact that Micah was standing up a lot more in his Penn State tape, right? Yeah, I mean, I think you look at a guy, he's explosive, he's a pass rush threat. I tend to think that he part of the issue with him is that I'm not a Penn State expert. I don't know the squad very well, but to me, he seemed like by far the best defender on that squad.
Yeah.
And I have to think that he was getting a ton of attention every single week. And that's what the tape showed, right? Like he was getting a lot of attention. The blocking schemes were designed to block him. So, the good ones obviously find a way to overcome. I think he still has a ways to go as a development player. But again, as I said, explosion plus flexibility plus just a sprinkle, just a soupçon of hand technique, that will get you really far in the NFL and in college football especially. But I think it will also make you at least useful enough early on as an NFL player as you develop other aspects of your game.
Did you have a player comp for him?
Not a specific one, but he isn't really that different than a lot of these other, Fowler, Beasley, kind of undersized pass rush types that are explosive. I find that his strengths and weaknesses are very similar to some of those guys. He's probably not as good as a run defender as some of those, at least coming out as some of those other kind of top end versions of these guys, like the Von Millers and that sort of thing. Which, limits his game a little bit to being, especially early on, kind of exclusively a pass rusher. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that he's so different than any one of those specific guys that the kind of sub 6'2", sub 260, sub 4'5" pass rushers,
Well, I will say one of the things that's really intriguing about Chop Robinson is we've seen over the last couple of years, like use Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith was a sub 6'3" pass rusher who ran a 4.39. He also weighed in at like 235 pounds.
That's true. Yeah.
Robinson is small, but he's not that small. He's 255 pounds. Now, that's quite a bit of a difference. Now, one of the things that's so intriguing to me is that the 1-5-4 10-yard split, there's only been 2 players ever that have been over 250 pounds and then have had a sub 1-5-5 10-yard split. And it's like him and Elvis Dumervil, and that's it. And maybe Elvis Dumervil was a little bit shorter.
That's a very interesting comparison, honestly. I think it's an interesting name to kind of keep in mind, honestly.
Yeah. And I just wanted to cross compare him to one more player.
Yeah.
I think the difference between like him and Sam Williams, who Sam Williams also ran, was it like a 4.46 40-yard dash. I just feel like he's way bendier than what Sam Williams is.
Yeah.
And you can see it like, man, he can get really, really low to the ground. And I just never saw Sam Williams have that kind of flexibility. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have different games, but I agree. I think Sam is more of your. I think look, the thing that was interesting about Sam coming out is that to me, you watched his tape and he seemed like a power rusher to me, right? Like in a lot of ways, and he kind of plays like that too. The 4.4 was surprising, I think, for everybody, right? Like when he ran that, and I think he's a power guy that has some speed to his game, which I think is what makes it valuable and why you really want to develop him. I think the speed is what this guy is all about. Chop Robinson, is all about, right? Like his game is built completely on that speed. And when you're talking about a guy whose game is completely built on speed, there's a whole other level of explosion that you experience while watching this guy versus watching someone like Sam Williams, who is a total freak of nature in his own right, but just a different player.
So Pro Football Focus has basically a database where they can cross compare players just based off athleticism and your pass rush win rate. The closest comp for Chop Robinson is actually Kayvon Thibodeau, who went 5 overall in the 2021 draft. So not saying he's as good of a prospect as Thibodeau, but in terms of athleticism, in terms of production, in terms of the advanced PFF stats, pretty close. Let's talk about a different style of defensive lineman, Darius Robinson, who could not be more different than Chop Robinson. We will get to him next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the college basketball tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can go make some parlays. You can even pick who you think is going to win the entire tournament. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you're having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news of the day, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, Lena, let's talk about a player that I've really grown to love. That's Darius Robinson from Missouri. He was awesome at the Senior Bowl, put together a really nice combine. It seems like his stock is trending way up. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of these guys that you feel like you get an impression with him one way, and then you kind of see some other stuff, and you start to change your opinion a little bit. First off, tall, long-levered edge he looks like a classic 5 technique, right? Like he's got huge hands, long arms, and kind of a filled out frame. Although I will say that I think he could gain some weight in the lower body, right? Like I
think his frame, he could easily put on 15 pounds and it wouldn't be any big deal.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because his body type, even though he's 285 or whatever it is, it feels like his body type could go either way, right? Like he could kind of stay here and gain some explosiveness and try to be a kind of, I don't know if bendy, but like, more of a speed explosion guy. Or he could kind of, put on, like they said, the 10 or 15 pounds and truly become, like a classic 5 technique. I don't know if anyone's actually interested in doing that, but it feels like he is kind of in that cross in the road, right? He's a leverage player for sure. He uses long arms with big hands to stone and manipulate tackles. The Missouri scheme kind of really highlights that. He had lots of opportunity to just almost kind of frog stance into these offensive tackles and then use his strength and leverage to kind of manipulate their bodies around to create the edges when he needs them. He has a strong core. Like he could twist and turn a blocker to gain outside leverage late in the snap to influence the runner's read to force a cutback. He gets underneath offensive tackles' pads. He keeps his hands above his eyes. He controls the blocker. But the defensive system isn't helping highlight his skill set as a pass rusher, though. Like he's not getting a ton of opportunity there, which is I feel like why a lot of us were kind of surprised by his performance at the Senior Bowl a little bit. When he is allowed to go half man on a tackle at a pass rush situation, he shows some explosiveness with his get off. It looks very different than when he's trying to play the run. So it's kind of was a nice, refreshing thing to see him get the opportunity to do that. Too many reps, though, where you see him try to go through the offensive tackle. And I don't know if that's a coaching point or if that's his choice. But he is, and I hate to be like this, he is the opposite of slippery. Like he gets blocked and stays blocked. And that's something that I feel like he needs to work on. And it doesn't make a ton of sense when comparing him to like what he does in the run game, right? Where he very easily manipulates the offensive tackle, discards him when he needs to make the play and gets off. It feels like in when he's pass rushing, he's more interested in fighting the guy than he is trying to get around him, right?
Yes.
He loses momentum too often. He ends up standing straight up. He needs a pass rush plan. I mean, these are all honestly, I think, notes on the same phenomenon, right? Like he gets in there, throws a pass rush move, it doesn't work, and then he kind of just stands up and he keeps trying to fight instead of trying to keep going or throw another move or try to get around him. He seems, I said this. He seems more focused on engaging the blocker first as opposed to getting around the blocker. He's great at the wrestling match aspect of the game, like toe to toe with an offensive tackle. He's doing well. He's experienced in withstanding double teams, and he holds up better at that than most edges you see. Right, he is because he's strong. He understands leverage. He can handle that aspect of the game. He has serious inside-outside flexibility potential. You saw him take snaps inside. Just the nature of the position he played, the edge type that he played at Missouri, lends him to being able to play some inside at tackle when you need him in pass rush situations. Where does he win? He's a powerful physical edge setter with pass rush upside potential. I think that aspect of his game just needs development. And honestly, it felt like he's grown just since whenever you watch his tape and the Senior Bowl, right? The Senior Bowl, he looks more refined, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very encouraging, right? Unanswered questions. What is the timeline before he can become like an 8 to 10 sack guy? Because I think ultimately Demarcus Lawrence is kind of a good barometer for this guy, right? Like he could be a dominant run edge setter who can give you, up to double-digit sacks, but I don't know if I would, consistently rely on.
He's not going to be a sack artist unless he just has one of those really weird years where he's just cleaning up a lot of sacks. Like that's just not going to be his game.
Yeah.
We've seen players like this come into the NFL over the last couple of years. I think Houston had two of them, right? It was Peyton Turner and Logan Hall. And back-to-back years. I think the difference between those two guys and Darius Robinson, I just think he's so much more physical. Those guys were like long and lean, and you kind of wondered, are they defensive tackles? Are they edge rushers? To me, Robinson is just – this is the good and bad thing about Robinson. Like he wants to turn every one-on-one rep into like a street fight, right? Like he wants to bully the offensive tackle. And sometimes that turns into him – staying blocked because he just wants to fight you and beat you up rather than try to get to the quarterback. Like I think there's got to be an in-between there a little bit. Right. But I will say go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think you're completely right. And we've seen a lot of these kind of longer drawn out guys who weren't like necessarily physical. So it was kind of tough to slot them, right? Because it's like, yeah, you want to give them opportunities to rush the passer inside, but you have to be a certain amount of physical, even in pass rushing snaps to like hold up inside. And it's not always for everybody. This guy, it's almost the opposite problem, right? Like he's almost too physical and too interested in fist fights to be an edge. Like he's so concerned about, winning the fight as opposed to beating the guy around the edge and making the play at times. But it really only kind of shows itself, it seemingly in pass rush situations. But there's so much potential there because of his explosiveness and because of his violence that if he could just figure out how to kind of maintain focus as a pass rusher and have a plan for when you throw your first move and it doesn't work, if he could figure that part out, he could get a lot better as a pass rusher, I believe.
Just from an analytic perspective, these numbers are from Pro Football Focus, 94th percentile run defense grade, 73rd percentile run stop percentage. Even the pass rush win rate was very good, 83rd percentile among all edges. So like you could see, especially this last year, he got better and better with every single game. I think long-term, this is the type of player that I would love to pair with Micah Parsons because in theory, somebody who can be really good at stopping the run, but can also do a lot of the dirty work, can be a bully. You mentioned Demarcus Lawrence kind of like as a comp. The difference is he's 285 pounds.
That's right.
Lawrence was 250 coming out of Boise State. And we talked about how we think Darius Robinson has the frame to add even more weight. These kind of guys are rare. Like you just don't find many of these players that are this big, this long, this powerful, and this athletic. I don't know where he goes. I think he'll be there when the Cowboys pick. I don't know if the Cowboys will be interested, but I am really intrigued by Darius Robinson.
Real quick, and I hate to put you on the spot here. Can you put up that graphic with his analytic percentages again one more time? So for YouTube folks that are watching and for podcasts, I'll describe it. At the very top, they have listed his pass rush grade and the percentile that he's in. He's in the 67th percentile, which is, above average, but not fantastic, right? His pass rush win percentage grading, right? He's in the 83rd percentile of pass rush win. Pass rush win is a measurement of how quickly the tackle, the end is able to get past the tackle. When we're describing wins, we're describing an ability to get past the tackle to set yourself up with explosion, right? And I think the disparity between the pass rush win percentage, right, and the pass rush grade, that is where his upside is, right? If you can increase the skill that he has, he's shown you with the pass rush win percentage that he has the explosion to get around the corner. Now it's about getting the hand technique down to keep the long arms off of you in order to get around and closing on the quarterback. That's kind of the missing piece of his game as a pass rusher.
All right, let's talk about a defensive tackle who early on in the process was viewed as a top 15 pick who could suddenly be available to the Cowboys at pick 24. We will get to him next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fastest and the easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total upfront so you know that you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are finishing up here with Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, who a lot of people have as the number 1 interior rusher in this class. Landon, what did you see when you put on the tape?
He looks like a linebacker who ate too much. He's especially with the number, right? He wears number 4 for Illinois. He looks and moves like a thick linebacker, he's under 6'2". He's got a little bit shorter arms, but he's got this powerful barrel chest, it's like and powerful lower body. Hands and feet move like a skilled edge player, right? He's fast and precise with his hand fighting. You don't, and on top of all that, besides how quickly his hands and his feet move in just a violent manner, he closes in a way that you just don't see defensive tackles close. Like his ability to get from, getting a free lane to the quarterback and to the quarterback is in an instant. It's like it really is like watching an edge player, close on a quarterback. Very solid versus the run. His technique seems more refined here, surprisingly enough to me. I thought that was a little bit shocking. And he seems to play with more consistent pad level when he's rushing the passer. Having said that, he won't make a living stonewalling double teams or two gapping. He wins in the run game by beating single blocks, right? He uses
he's a penetrator.
Yeah, he is definitely a penetrator, right? He uses a hump move very effectively in the run game. He'll flow with the offensive lineman in zone, and then he'll hump back inside to make the tackle. When he gets low and is able to drive with his hands above his eyes, he is very hard to stop. Very hard. He uses speed to power very well. He's versatile in his alignment. Illinois moved him around to take advantage of matchups all up and down the line, and he was able to kind of win from a bunch of different spots. His bread and butter is a swim move, without a doubt. He wants to get he wants to get on his blocker quickly, dismiss his initial punch, and be around him before the blocker can get a second punch reloaded. He gets too upright at times versus the pass. I kind of mentioned that earlier. His quickness in hands help him get away with it, but he needs to rush with better pad level in the NFL against NFL guards and centers. Yeah. He will make a living as a disruptor, but he gives you an added bonus of being a guy who will make plays late in the snap as well. He has a high motor. He doesn't give up on this play.
Hard.
He plays really hard. And I think, when you measure him versus other guys, as far as their, initial penetration or explosion or ability to kind of win early versus the other kind of elite defensive tackle types, he's probably middle of the pack in that situation. But when you add that combined with the fact that he plays with an incredibly high motor, he's going to get all of those plays that those, kind of initial part of the snap that those other defensive tackles will get. And then on top of that, he will also add in 4 or 5 plays a game where his hustle helped him make the tackle or force a fumble or whatever it was, deflect a pass. Where does he win? He's an explosive gap penetrator. That's basically what he does as a defensive tackle. Unanswered questions. It's very similar in a lot of ways to Chop Robinson, right? His quickness and hand technique kind of counterbalance his lack of length and leverage inside. Will he be able to kind of continue that in the NFL? Can he develop the technique quickly enough to counteract what he's losing while transitioning from college where there's less length to the NFL where everybody's got long arms?
Yep. I really like him. He's a good player. When I was writing my notes down, I wrote Tommy Harris, the Pro Bowl defensive tackle for the Bears. Too.
Yeah.
Kind of undersized, but so athletic. Kind of pinballs the offensive lineman sometimes.
Yes.
It's kind of funny to watch. I watched the Wisconsin game last night just because I want to watch him against quality offensive linemen. In that game, he was playing Tanner Bortolini, somebody that I like quite a bit. He had a 43% win rate on pass rushes in that game against Wisconsin. 43%. Turned on the Penn State game. 41% win rate. So even in like the biggest games against quality offensive linemen, he was the best player on the field. And again, if you're watching with us on YouTube right now, you can see the advanced stats. 96 percentile pass rush win rate or pass grade. 96 percentile pass rush win rate. 94th percentile no play action pass rush grade. On true pass sets, 96 percentile. Like, he just wins at an absurd rate. The run defense stuff is average, but that's also because he just got the most attention. Like, he was by far the best player in this defensive line, and every team knew it. They threw whatever they could at him. I don't know how much interest the Cowboys have, especially considering that he's got, I believe is it a Jones fracture that he's recovering from? Are the Cowboys willing to take another injured defensive lineman in round one? I don't know, but he is a doggone good player.
Yeah. Look, I think there's a reason he's a first rounder, and he's definitely a first rounder all day. You just don't see interior guys who are explosive like this, who can close like that, who, are dominant in the pass game like that. I agree about the pass rush, about the run defense stuff. It's like he had I'm assuming that his run defense grades are because when people were running the ball, they were double teaming him.
Yeah,
because he's by far the best defender on. It's Illinois, guys. Like, he had no business playing there, honestly. Like, and I think he is by far the best defender on there. And I think you just see all the attention that he's garnering when they are double teaming him. And then, like I said, usually you watch these guys and you expect them to be bad run players. That's just the case with these kind of undersized pass rush first defensive tackles. You don't expect necessarily for them to be world beaters, but in the situation where he's being blocked one-on-one in run blocking situations, I think he can win there a lot. And so that gives me hope and promise, because if he plays for the Cowboys, he's not going to get the same number of double teams that he got at Illinois. It will still be NFL competition to step up, but it'll be one less person. So you hope that it kind of counterbalances that. I like him a lot.
In your mind, how would he fit, like, just right away with Oso Odighizuwa, Mozzie Smith, and the rest of the defensive tackles on this team?
That's my issue here, right? Is that I with Minnesota, with Minnesota, I just called him Minnesota. With Zimmer coming in, like I just you wonder like how many undersized under tackles he's going to really want, and obviously you're going to want to continue to feature Osa, who I think was took a huge step last year and was one of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL last season. So I tend to think that you definitely can play these guys in the same snap, especially in pass rush situations. But I tend to think that Zimmer is going to want more beef at the defensive tackle position. So even if you drafted this guy with the idea that, he would get snaps with Osa Digizua, I have to imagine that it would mostly be him rotating with Osa Digizua while they put another big body defensive tackle inside. And that has nothing to do with him, with Johnny. I think it has everything to do with the situation with the Cowboys.
If you just want to get more talent on the defensive line, I think you grab him and you figure it out later. Just really quickly before we go, can you rank these three in order in which your preference for the Cowboys?
I mean, it's really hard, right?
I know, because all three of them are very different from each other.
Yeah. I would probably go, and a lot of fit is going to be a lot of this too, but I would probably go chop Johnny Darius, just because I think you've got something in Sam Williams and that I still want to explore a little bit more. And I think Darius and Sam would kind of be vying for the same spot. I think Chop Robinson actually gives you true flexibility to use Micah Parsons however you like, right? You can obviously use them both on the field at the same time, but if you wanted to get the opportunity to play him in more linebacker, you're not necessarily taking away from your pass rush as much if you have Chop Robinson kind of reducing down into that role. And Johnny Newton is just such a unique guy. Like, honestly, if Osa wasn't here, I think Johnny would be the top one of these picks for me.
I'm just not going to answer. I'm just going to decline to answer. How's that?
What is that? You can't just decline to answer.
I probably would be the most excited if they went Chop, Newton, Darius.
Okay.
But I honestly, I would be happy with all three. Like, we jump on here Thursday night, I would be very happy with all three. All three of them, I think, should be first-round players. And I think they all make the Cowboys better in year one. So,
again, real quick, the more we go through this, the more we kind of showing there's a lot of good options that they're going to be available for the Cowboys on Thursday night.
Compared to last year where it was really slim pickings at 26, I feel like there's going to be 5 or 6 players available for the Cowboys that I absolutely love. So Dallas is in a really good spot here in round one. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we're going to answer your Twitter questions. And then on Friday, we're doing Mock Draft Simulation 2.0. Make sure you guys tune in for that. I know a lot of you really, really like that. We've got something different ready for that one, so tune in. Make sure you're downloading the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.